Hi everyone, it's February 15th, 2024, and this is the weekly Backdrop developer meeting. And we get together every week to talk about development priorities, mostly around Backdrop Core. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the Internet core committer and technical lead for the Backdrop project, calling in from Oakland, California. We've got a little group here today, and we'll do some introductions. We'll start with Greg, and then we'll go to Justin.
Hey, my name is Greg. I'm joining usually from Melbourne, Australia, but sometimes from Greece. Interested in helping in any way that I can with Backdrop, and I my day job is a Drupal support engineer for a hosting company, and yeah, that's it.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Justin, and then Joseph.
Hey, I'm Justin Kaiser. I work for a nonprofit in Muncie, Indiana. I've got Drupal, WordPress, and Backdrop sites, and I do more with Contrib in Backdrop than Core, but I like listening in.
Thanks, Justin. Joseph, and then Laren.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a developer from Las Vegas, Nevada, and a core committer. And for a change, I'm actually working on a backdrop site for a client, so that's cool.
Yay! I know how that feeling is. Laren, and then Anthony.
Hi, I'm Laren. I live in Memphis, and I am a core committer and also heavily involved in Contrib space and work for Atten Design Group doing backdrop primarily.
Thanks,
Hi,
Aaron.
I'm Anthony, and I am in Alameda, California. I work at Giant Rabbit as a tech lead and developer there, and we're midstream on a bunch of backdrop migrations from Drupal 7, and we're looking to get more involved. We're doing a bunch of backports and ports of modules, and so I'm just here to listen in and get all the information I can get.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. Is that Alameda Island? Like,
It is the island of Alameda off the coast of Oakland. Yeah.
oh, great. So you're basically my neighbor.
Yeah, we're real close. Yep. Yeah.
Excellent. And speaking of Anthony, welcome as our latest applicant to the Contrib group. It's great to have you join the Contrib group. It's pretty unusual that you're in the meeting at the same day that we acknowledge a new contributor joining the Contrib group. But do you want to tell us about, sorry to put you on the spot, tell us about these modules that you've ported: term status, views
Yeah.
filter populate, and views block area?
Yes. So basically we have, a whole, I think right now we have 6 ongoing Drupal to backdrop migrations and probably another at least half dozen to a dozen more coming in the next year or so. And they all have a variety of modules, many of which that don't have ports for backdrop yet. So anytime we come across them, we have a sort of process where we're deciding whether we're going to move them over or not. And if we're going to move them over, then we're going to contribute them back. So that's what those look like, is these are just the first set from one of our websites that I'm currently managing the migration for. And I think we have at least 4 or 5 more just from that site. And then we have another large scale site that we're doing that probably will have at least a dozen modules ported over. Yeah, so that's just the start of it.
That's fantastic. Not only the contrib modules, but of course just the new sites. That's exciting in itself. So thank you so much for that work, and I'm really excited to hear the backdrop is working for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm
and
loving it.
Anthony, if you happen to find any blockers, any things that we can improve in core that would make the porting easier, just fire away, issues in the core queue, and we'll look onto those. Yes.
I appreciate that. So far, things are going very smoothly.
Excellent. Have you guys been using Coder Upgrade by
Um,
chance?
I have not been using that. I looked into using it. I think we'll probably end up using it. I sort of like to get into the guts of things first to know what's happening before I automate anything, just to make sure I get the full scope of the changes. And most of our developers like doing that too. So we'll see if we end up doing it. But at this point, it's kind of like a checklist that we're going down to port the things over. And for the most part, it just works. So we'll see.
Excellent. Super. Yeah, my experience with Coder Upgrade is that it works almost 95% of the time. You end up with a backdrop module on the other end of it.
That's very cool.
But the thing I don't like about it is that it doesn't shorten up the variable names that are in the config files. And that just is like, because it just takes the variable names out of Drupal 7 and puts them right in the config files. But almost all of the time that includes the module namespace, and the config file is already the module namespace. So you don't need to have the name of the module in front of every variable in Backdrop. So that's
that
the
makes
only
sense.
thing that I wish that it was a little bit better at.
Well, and there's some bugs with if you run it on PHP 8.x, I think it's stripping out some pass by reference ampersands, and that's kind of a trouble to find if you're not expecting it.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard of that. Okay,
Yeah.
that's okay.
I believe
That's a
I
new
believe
problem since I last used it.
I believe that someone as a temporary workaround is putting a requires PHP 7.4 or less on the current version, which is pretty bad.
Agreed. That is pretty bad. Let's see. All right, and let's see. We also had a couple of new releases for Contrib modules this week. Security Kit came out last Thursday. I'm not sure if that was already mentioned, but Security Kit came out a week ago, and then UberCart Affiliate version V2. So there's a new Contrib modules that have new releases this week. It's great to see those coming through as well. Let's see. I think that's all we have for community updates, and we'll just get right into core issues. The first one that we had that was raised for this week is Laren wanted to talk about issue 2277, the make config storage swappable. Is there anything in particular you want to start with there, Laren?
Basically, I want to just figure out where we're at and what needs to happen, and see if I can maybe put myself down as an advocate to that one. I don't know that I'm going to be able to fix whatever little bit is remaining. I think if I understand it correctly, the functionality seems to be working, and you did yeoman's work on getting the tests working locally, but the sticking point is getting the tests running in GitHub Actions. Is that accurate to anybody's knowledge?
Yes, that's exactly it. That the overall pull request looks great. If there's one thing I would nitpick about, it's the syntax of how a database is specified as the config storage. Like I think that normally it takes like the file path to where config files should be stored, but if it's the database, then it's like db:/database name, and it's the weirdest thing about that is that there's only one slash instead of a db:// like all stream wrappers, for example. But I don't know where that syntax came from, but that's a pretty small nitpick because it's not a publicly exposed string anywhere, so it doesn't really affect the end user. It's just the internal use of it. But eventually that will probably get used someplace else, and then we won't ever be able to change it again. So that's my only tiny nitpick about the current approach to the swappable config. But the thing that's holding it up is getting tests running. And a lot of this has to do with as much as we love it, the caching of the installation profile. That the process for running a test right now is that SimpleTest usually first installs Backdrop once with every profile and then makes a copy of its database. Well, kind of makes a set of database prefix tables for each profile and a copy of the config for each profile. And that process needs to be updated so that it doesn't copy the config for each one of them. It also I think means in my testing, the furthest I could get is that you can get tests running using the swappable config if you installed Backdrop with the swapped config in the first place. So if you installed Backdrop using database config, then you can run the tests using database config. But you can't do the opposite. If you installed with database, you can't run the file-based one. If you installed with files, you can't run the database one. And that's the tricky, tricky bit.
It was one of the things that I wanted to ask, is the expectation to run the full set of tests using both configurations? Is that the expectation, or just a subset with database. 'Cause I'm thinking as well how long it will, how it will increase the time of the tests.
Yeah, my
Double it. Maybe.
my initial tack on this was to only run the database tests, since they're non-default, against the config group. So all of the tests that test config itself, that should be all that needs to be run, at least for starters. And initially, I was also only going to run it against the latest version of PHP. So maybe we should also run that against the oldest version of PHP. But running just the config tests is like, it's like 45 seconds compared to, you know, the 5 minutes for one of the splits of the other tests. So it doesn't seem that bad. All right. So yeah, so that is the sticking point on that is test coverage. I'd like to take another look at this too. I'm not sure that I have fully exhausted my ability to do this, but yeah, it's tricky. But it's sad that this is literally the whole holdup here, is that we can't get the tests to run comprehensively. And I kind of maybe that, like, you know, you can only run the tests on the kind of config that you have is not really a problem, because when we run the tests in an automated fashion, we reinstall Backdrop from scratch during the test run. So maybe that's fine that it just installs with files and then it runs it against files. But right now we haven't gotten to the point that we can actually get the tests executing at all against GitHub Actions. I think my pull request actually even started it. It set up a new test run for it, but it's failing. So that's the trick.
Could it be that we set it up from the get-go as a separate, you know how we have the matrix for the different PHP versions, that we set it up as an additional test, just so that we unblock it?
Yeah, let me see what I did this so far. It is in fact a totally different workflow right now, which is good. So functional test that runs the 3 different sections that runs, and then database config is a totally separate test. It's a totally separate workflow. But, well, I say totally separate, but maybe there's a portion of this pull request that could be merged in just to split, like just to trim things down, because there was like a lot of code duplication between the two of them, because like setting up the web server is identical between the two workflows. And so another thing this pull request does is it sets up an action, which we haven't used before, but an action is a reusable set of steps that a workflow can use. And so it sets up an action for configure the web server that installs Apache and MySQL and drops in the config files and stuff like that. And then both workflows, their first step is set up the web server, and then the following steps are the ones that are different. And so that might ultimately be useful for contrib modules too, that they could just use the, you know, set up web server action. I think that related to actions, I'm going on a little tangent here, but it's been raised a couple of times if we could start setting up GitHub Marketplace or GitHub just like have a repository of actions to help contrib modules execute certain things like this, set up the web server without having to copy and paste all, you know, 150 lines of GitHub setup. That'd be a good idea too. So anyway, that's where we are on that issue. It's stuck on testing. It would be really great to see that moving forward. And yes,
speaking of testing, before
okay.
we move to the next subject, speaking of testing, and since we have more contributors coming in, we have been plagued for a few months now by this, you know, layout, multiple layout thing. There's one failing test that consistently randomly fails, and we haven't been able to figure out why or where that's happened. I'm gonna try to find the issue in the queue. But yeah, any fresh eyes going through that and trying to figure out where things might be going wrong. It's just that so far what has been going on is that this test randomly fails, and we'll look at the failure, and if it's only that, we go, oh yeah, that's the known gremlin, and we just ignore it. But it would be great to figure out what it is and sort it out.
Yeah, do we have,
It's
we had a big random, oh, okay, it's 1478 that is the random test failures issue. Um,
Which one
isn't
is
it?
it? Sorry, the number?
1478 is where we're tracking all of the random fails that have ever happened, which fortunately we fixed most of them, but there's one of them that is absolutely chronic still.
Yeah.
Isn't
So
it the layout up?
6293. Yeah, 6293 is the actual one
Yeah,
that's.
layout upgrade path test.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't even have a pull request because nobody has any idea what it is.
Yeah.
Indigo's LLS saying, I'm afraid it's a problem caused by some race condition. Hmm.
I don't like those.
No, they're tricky to solve, especially if it's a funny race condition caused by simple test, which I don't, this race condition theoretically shouldn't happen with simple test because they're being run, they're fresh installs of backdrop, so they shouldn't interfere with each other.
Well, it could be
Yeah, this
like
reminds me. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Joseph.
if it's layout upgrade, so it could be that it's like triggering an upgrade, something returns, and then it goes to the next step in the test before the upgrade actually finishes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hmm.
This reminds me of the other tricky one that we had with the dates where it was when the tests were running, if it was close to midnight and it was the test was running just a little bit before midnight and then it was finishing after midnight, it would be a different date and it would mess things up. So anyways,
Yeah, that issue still crops up every now and then, Greg. Unfortunately, the date testing
yes,
one.
but not as much as it used to.
Yes,
So
but
we've
not as
fixed.
much as it used to. Correct. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what to do in this one other than like just keep looking. It's marked helped wanted. Yeah, issue 6293. That is definitely one that needs help. I really wish that if this was like a smaller test or like something, I would venture the very unconventional for us step of potentially disabling the test. But this is pretty important. It's an upgrade path test, and it has to do with layouts, which is the biggest conversion that we have from 777 to backdrop. So I think it would be really uh, sad of us if that were the outcome. So I still like. I think for now we're just going to keep ignoring that failure as it happens.
Yeah, and the key thing is that it randomly happens. Sometimes you just close the pull request, open it again, and it just passes. Yeah,
Hmm.
or you just.
Yep. But oftentimes, contrib authors, they they're understanding enough to be like, there's no way that my pull request caused that failure, because it's not layout related in any way.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and the other indication is that it randomly picks a PHP version to fail on, so it doesn't fail consistently, say on 5 or 7 or 8. It just picks a random version and it fails there, and then it
Yeah.
switches to a different version.
Yeah. Okay. Let's anything else on that, Greg, or the swappable config?
No, no, just soliciting help because most of the brain power has been through this. So we had quite a few pairs of eyes go through this and try to figure out what it is. Since we have new contributors, I just wanted to sort of like point out that this is another thing that we would love to get fixed. So fresh eyes, you know.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about some jQuery or JavaScript related stuff. So first thing we want to talk a little bit about is the CKEditor 4 LTS security release that came out yesterday. And this was the first time that CKEditor 4, which is technically unsupported except for under CKSource's LTS program, this is the first time that a security issue was found in CKEditor 4, making the open source version of CKEditor 4 theoretically now vulnerable across the board. So this is interesting. The way I got the news, at least, was it came in through the Drupal security updates mailing list that there's a new release of the CKEditor 4 LTS module. kind of the interesting thing about this is that it was the CKEditor for LTS module. That's the one maintained by CK Source itself, not the CKEditor 4 module, which is the one that was just pulled out of core and then put into contrib. I think that module is totally unsupported though already, so that's probably why there wasn't a security update there. But kind of the interesting thing about this is that it showed us what CKEditor LTS updates are going to look like in the future. Actually, I'm having trouble even finding the LTS module. What's the namespace of it? Does anyone know?
I think it's __ LTS. So CKEditor 4 _ LTS.
Okay. Oh, still not finding it. Okay, well anyway, okay, there it is. CKEditor _ LTS with no 4. So I'm gonna kind of read through this a little bit. So what I'm mostly just completely baffled about is the licensing on it, because it started from CKEditor 4, which is GPL, as is 5, and they're hosting it on Drupal.org, which requires all code to be GPL. And so they put it onto Drupal.org with the new release. And as far as I can tell, the license on this is still 4. And they did just put the entire update into the Drupal.org repository. They did not say you have to go download this from another place. It's just a part of the LTS module and the library there. So we didn't know what this was going to look like. But now that we've seen it, it's like, oh, they just updated the source code in a place that is very easy to access. And according to every known interpretation of how the GPL works, it's GPL code. And so there's nothing stopping us from just taking the CKEditor 4 library that they updated in Drupal contrib and copying it over to our core module. I don't see any legal or technical reason why that isn't possible for us. They might not be very happy with us if we did that. I think that's the only real risk here.
I kind of have ethical reservations because, yeah.
Well, it's funny. The ethical thing, I think, is that they're saying that it's not open source when it is. Right? That's what I think is the most unethical part about all of this. And I mean, sure, maybe us ignoring their desires is unethical as well, but I don't know. It's like this is the ethos of what the GPL is, and I think that might actually be something worth fighting for. So yeah, it's a strange thing that's happened here. But in any case, I think we should also clarify that the backdrop module as it is, or the CKEditor 4 module as it ships with core, does not seem to be vulnerable. This vulnerability only seems to apply to the capabilities of CKEditor 4 to edit an entire page all at once, including the top of the page, including the head tag, which is a kind of absurd use case for full HTML page editing, that it allows injecting scripts into the head section of a full page of HTML when it's being edited. Backdrop core, as it's configured, or not even as it's configured, as the features it's providing to users, there's no way to even get to that level of functionality. So even though there is a vulnerability in a particular specialized feature of CKEditor 4, it's impossible to use that functionality inside of Backdrop by itself. So we're not really in a super hurry to apply the patch, because it doesn't fix anything for us anyway. I would be tempted, to say that doesn't even qualify as a security release. It would just be a security announcement saying, hey, we updated, but it doesn't affect you in any material way.
Yeah, the reason why I brought it up, put it in the agenda before we started this meeting, is just to decide, make a sort of a soft decision, not now, but we need to decide how we will be proceeding in the future with any security releases that do affect us.
Yeah. Based on what I've seen from this pull request, I would say that we would apply the fix from the contrib module. If it continues to work the way that it is, if this did affect Backdrop, we would take what's there and update our version of CKEditor to use it.
Does it, like once we do it, does it complain to purchase a license?
Oh, that's a great
the other.
question.
So that's one of the things that would conflict with what is in core for us.
So yeah, but what I'm looking at is I'm just looking at the pull request itself that only changed the related files. And so that means that it's really easy for us to port just the relevant changes and not update to whatever other stuff they've put into CKEditor 4 to like enter a license code or something like that. Because there's just the changes necessary. This pull request for CKEditor LTS module is unfortunately really huge. I'm not sure if they did this intentionally to obscure the security fixes, but they updated two unrelated things in the release. They updated all of their language files, which is useful because there's probably additional translations. But then they also updated the copyright date from 2003 to 2004 in every file in all of CKEditor. So it made it so that the pull request is like hundreds of files that have been modified when really there's only like 2 files that receive serious changes. I'm still trying to find the one file that was actually changed. I see that the test file that was updated, but not the main file. Oh, you know, this would be interesting. Maybe it wouldn't be possible for us to cherry pick the one commit out if it's in the compressed version of CKEditor. Yeah, it is in the compressed version of CKEditor. Yeah, interesting. Let's see if I can send a link to this.
Yeah, just thinking of worst case scenarios, just picking your brain regarding thoughts. Now, if it is not possible in the future to update version 4 to a secure version, would we pull it out of core?
Huh. I think the short answer to that is no. We wouldn't pull it out, but we would probably start being more aggressive about warning people that they're using an insecure version.
That's where I was getting at. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't think we can do that based on the expectations of the way that Backdrop works and the expectations of our community that your site will keep working. It should keep working, you know, in any way that we can possibly manage. Yeah. Okay, so that does make things a little bit more difficult. I thought we could just pull it out, but then I didn't realize that it would of course be in the compressed version of CKEditor 4. So there's just the CKEditor.js file, and that's the file that contains the changes. It would be really difficult to pull this out. So, which by the way, this is also technically against the GPL. Because you can't have something be GPL and only distribute it in obfuscated source code. So it's a little complaint there. All right, well now we know how they're towing the line there. It isn't easy to pull out, but maybe it is still GPL, but whatever. Okay, yeah, speaking of GPL software and JavaScript related stuff, jQuery is the next topic on the schedule here. jQuery 4 had a beta release just 2 weeks ago, and IndigoZilla is on top of things with all things jQuery and has filed issue 6404, which adds jQuery 4 as an additional option. This is probably a little bit ahead of when we really need it because jQuery 4 isn't even released yet. It's just available as a beta. But IndigoZilla just added this pull request to start adding it as an option. We already have something like jQuery Upgrade where you can select your version of jQuery. New sites get jQuery 3. Old sites, they started on jQuery 1. They can switch to 3 if they need to. And this adds jQuery 4 as an additional option, not the default, just giving it as an additional option. But the big kind of issue that we have here is that jQuery removed a number of functions that have direct JavaScript equivalents now, and so there was no need to have them in place. And I think on top of that, we have some issues where a bunch of our we have third-party JavaScript libraries that then use these deprecated functions, but those third-party libraries haven't been updated in a very long time. And so this puts us in a place where it's like the library dependency probably will never be jQuery 4.0 compatible. What do we do about that? For now, IndigoZilla made a small backwards compatible library that just wraps those 4 functions that used to be part of jQuery into, like, she makes them available under jQuery 4. So that makes it so that these modules can continue using those functions even though they're not in jQuery 4. They're in this extra little library that she wrote. It's a little bit...
Yeah, which is like very small. It's like 30 lines of code or less. It's like, yeah.
Yep. So that's a pretty good fix for the time being. I think everybody would prefer that we could actually fully remove those functions. We can go through and make all of core stop using those functions, of course, but it's a little bit unfortunate that somebody could start using them again, like they could just slip in and we wouldn't notice, which maybe brings us to our next topic, which is linting for JavaScript. So maybe we could make it so that won't happen if we had linting on our JavaScript. So right now we have PHP-CS and the spell checker, both that run checks on code as it comes in to check for spelling mistakes and to check for coding standards. But the coding standards only apply to PHP files right now. There's no checking at all on JavaScript files. And so wouldn't it be great if we had something to enforce our coding standards on JavaScript files? So yes, there's 2. Where's this discussion been happening, Greg? Is there an issue for it yet?
It started on Zulip, yes, and there is an issue. Just bear with me. So the issue number is 6402. So
excellent.
Although there is a pull request there, provided that's very, very rough proof of concept, which adds one of the options, ESLint, which is what Drupal has gone with as well. It needs a lot of cleanup, and we need to make decisions to start adding or tweaking the rules, which is something that allows ESLint is very configurable, so we can decide what that works for us and what not. And at this point, I would like us to also, there's a in the market space a GitHub action that actually, what I'm using now is it checks only the files that were changed, but it checks the entire file. I would like to move that to checking only the lines that check the change and maybe a few lines above and below. And yeah, so there's a lot of work. And my next point was to provide an alternative pull request for JSInt instead. Also, the way that ESLint outputs those errors, it's very verbose at the moment because it provides a line that is a debug line basically to let you know what rule triggered this complaint, error, or warning. And yeah, whereas JSHint provides much more user-friendly, contributor-friendly, I should say, messages to let you know what went wrong and what you need to change. So yeah, ESLint, the way it is now, it provides very cryptic messages, and you have to, yeah, decipher what it's complaining about.
I know that it looks like just checking this out here. It looks like ESLint is a lot simpler to configure than PHPCS, which has like complex configuration rules. This is really just a single JSON file of configuration. It doesn't actually have any code. Do you have any feeling about whether or not these rules should exist in another repository like they do for PHPCS versus being in the core repository?
Yes, eventually, because then Contrib can use it. Because I think that was one of the reasons why we moved it there, and also to make it independently of core committer involvement. So if we decide on the policy and we tweak or add or remove rules, then that can happen independently of a specific core merge, right?
Yep.
But that requires that we get to a working point first. And the last thing that I would like us to do is merge something that we complain about, like go through our entire code base and check everything and complain, because that's not feasible. Maybe that can be a side project, like an ongoing request. I think that Peter BW Panda created such pull requests for PHP CS as well, where we were supposed to take one module, one core module at a time and do it. But my feeling is that this will happen organically. It's already happening in the pull requests. We are fixing things as they come up. It's just that we haven't been doing that for JavaScript, and it's like there's a lot.
Yep. Yeah,
So yeah,
I agree. The way that it's been working for PHP has actually been really pretty effective. Like it's slow and steady, a couple files at a time, getting updated, and that seems to work really pretty well. So I'm not opposed to using that same pattern where we don't try to update all of core all at once. It just kind of happens as people touch the files again that coding standards get cleaned.
yep. Um, Ready for another good segue?
Yeah,
Good.
sure. That's great. So the current status of that is that we have a pull request for ESLint. We're going to make another pull request, same issue for JSLint, so that we can look at both of them.
Yes.
Or okay,
Yeah. Same issue. So, and if someone wants to do something for JS lint, which is like very restrictive, I've just done a bunch of research, and that's at the top of the issue summary. And everybody in the developer community seems to agree that it's very restrictive unless you agree with all the rules that come with it and you don't want to tweak anything, because that's the proper way to do it. Then you can start using it. Otherwise, if you want to tweak, stay away from it. And this is the reason why it was forked, by the way. JS Hint is a fork of that. One recent change in the JS Hint project is that they also decided to strip away into a separate project the styling rules and just focus on basically the code analysis, like the problems in code, rather than the formatting. And that became a separate project, which is now archived, and it points to ESLint. That's why I sort of like started with ESLint, because that does everything. Yeah. So I have plans in the future to also do the same with CSS, and ESLint, I think, does partially that, but there's other linters out there, and we should eventually go there. What I wanted to bring up next is issue 6302, which I've recently made an ongoing issue, and that's about Syspell. So there's things that are tormenting some of the pull requests that are irrelevant, and I'm slowly trying to clean that up. What I would like, because there's a lot of core committers in this call, is just to solicit the help of core committers. If you're finding yourself that you want to do some contributions, easy, quick thing, like every week or every second week when you check the queue, just go through this issue and see if there's any pending pull requests. The one that I currently created focus on a single instance of a word that keeps complaining, which is the word my module, which has been like 99.9% of the usage is in .api.php files. Basically, it doesn't touch any code, any actual code. So I would like to get that out of the way, because it touched on multiple files, and then the next pull request would be basically updating the dictionary. So yeah, every now and then, just take a look there, and if you see a pull request, just review it and merge if you feel that it's okay. It will make it easier for contributors to get less complaints in the pull requests that they're filing.
great. This looks great. Okay. All right. Those are the major topics that we had for today. Just gonna put it out there again that 2 weeks from now, February 29th, we're going to do the Backdrop 2.0 dev meeting. So that'll be a special edition in which we actually have a topic beforehand. But I think that at this point we're still, want to be clear that it's not 2.0 is still very far away, and that we're just going to have the discussion about what approach we want to have for 2.0, just like overall. I think we've actually already discussed this multiple times. I think we already have an approach, but it'll be an opportunity to revisit, discuss, maybe talk about publicity. It's been a long time since we made any kind of public statement on 2.0. Look at our 2.0 blog posts and see if anything needs to be updated, that sort of thing. Anything else that you guys would like to bring up before
Yeah,
we
well,
close?
I'll update the main site as well. Since we started mentioning events, also April 4th and 5th will be our next Backdrop Live, and I'm guessing that the Backdrop 2.0 discussion, there will be a session about that to discuss things further. That's what I wanted to bring up. And then if we want to get, because we have another 5 minutes, unless you want to bail early, Nate, it's just to point out that Robert has been working on a couple of issues, on one actually to um, UX. I'll find the issues basically where you select the parent menu item. And I've been meaning to review those. So the two issues is 6390 and 6392.
Okay, I'm gonna share this screen since I don't know what this one's about.
Say you
Okay.
already know or you don't know?
No, I don't know. So add
Yep.
a parent menu selector to menu add and edit forms. So
Yes.
oh, so
So
it just adds the select list.
yes, because if you have all the menus available, especially the admin menu there, the select becomes really huge and cumbersome. So basically, instead of having a single select that puts everything there,
Oh,
we have two selects. Yeah, that's it.
yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, so this issue started as adding those to the menu add and edit forms, but I said, hey, we should do the same in the content type configuration and the content creation. And then Bugfolder said maybe we should split that to a separate issue, and that's what 6392 is about, which now has a pull request as well.
Cool. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's nice. That'll be a nice fix.
Yep.
Great. Is this in a milestone yet? No, not yet. This seems like it's a oh, I can't put
It's
it
a
in.
feature request, so yeah.
Well, it's a feature request, but it's a UX thing, right? So
Oh yeah, you can consider a UX
yeah,
task or yeah.
yep. Yeah, unless it has any kind of changes to functions, and it looks like it's mostly just going to be form callbacks being modified. So that's all within bug fix category.
Yeah,
Great.
it's just letting you filter that second one. So it's not so unwieldy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love it. Okay. All right. Well, let's close up for today. Thank you everybody for being here as always. And I appreciate all the topics that were being brought to the table. Greg, I marked your CSPA 1 RTBC. So yeah,
Cool. Thank you.
thanks everybody so much. And yeah, I'll see you guys online and see you next week, hopefully. So, all right.
Right.